prizes for winning the fair was to bang the gavel to start the selectmen's meeting. So John, come over here. Come on, buddy.
Yeah.
So what I want you to do is hit that. Can you do that? All right. Give it a good whack.
Not too hard. All right, go.
All right.
All right, the meeting is called to order. John, can you stay with us for a second and help us do something else?
Sure.
Your mom could be right here.
All right.
We're going to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and you can follow along, okay? We're going to pledge to the flag here, and when you start school, every morning in your classroom, they will recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and that's because we're a free country, and we're honoring all the soldiers who died to keep us free, and we're honoring our flag. So you got to put your right hand over your heart and follow along, okay? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Nice job. Yeah.
Thank you.
And John named the bull Frank. That was the winning name for the bull. And I believe it had nothing to do with the police chief, but.
All right, the first item on the agenda is citizens' concerns, and these are issues that citizens might wish to speak about that aren't on the agenda. Are there any citizens that wish to come forward at this point? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the chairman's update of current events. First issue is a national organization called Americans United for Separation of Church and State has filed a lawsuit against the town alleging that town meetings vote to acquire permanent historic preservation restrictions in return for funding preservation of historic church structures violates the Massachusetts Constitution. So we've been sued for violations of the Massachusetts Constitution for granting for town meeting voting to use Community Preservation Act funding to help repair historic church structures in return for historic preservation restrictions granted by those churches. The town certainly supports separation of church and state, which Acton patriots fought for and died to preserve. Community Preservation Act funding does not promote any religious viewpoint. Rather, it serves the important secular public purpose of permanently preserving structures which confer on our patriots the honor they deserve by connecting us with their memory. The town has funded preservation of many privately held historic structures regardless of their use. The town's Community Preservation Committee vetted all applications for CPA funding and recommended these projects to town meeting. Both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee supported the CPC's recommendations, and town meeting voted overwhelmingly to approve the funding. For these reasons, the town believes that it was legal and appropriate to fund these historic preservation projects. However, the town certainly respects the views of all taxpayers on the important issues that this litigation raises, and the town will give the issues careful consideration and determine the best course to protect the town's interests. The town has unrolled its new website. So if you go to acton-ma.gov, you can access the new website. It includes a redesigned user interface and menu structure that allows for easier navigation throughout the site, helping visitors get the information they're looking for faster. An important new function is search functionality. We used Google to scan all of our docushare documents so that they are much easier to access more quickly, and a reorganized homepage that separates content into distinct horizontal sections, allowing the town to better showcase information and alert citizens to new activity. There's also an ongoing activity section and expansion of the past quick links area that allows the town to post more links to current projects, programs, and important town resources directly on the homepage. So we hope that the new website will be a much better service to the town residents. We received and help me with this, Steve, $41,000 grant for the Crosstown Connect.
Correct.
Was that from the Lowell Transit Authority or the state, or?
Not exactly sure.
Okay, but Crosstown Connect is our bus that runs on a regular schedule from East Acton over to the train station and back and forth. We're going to have an interesting fall in terms of voting. We need to get the town clerk to give out, make sure citizens are aware of this. We will have 3 elections this fall. One is the state primary in September. On September 20th, there'll be an election to decide whether citizens want to fund the new Minuteman Tech building, fund the cost for building a new school for Minuteman Tech. And then there'll be the presidential election in November. It'll certainly be a challenge for the town clerk. There'll be a new twist to the presidential election. It's my understanding that under the new state law, there has to be early voting and people have to be allowed to vote, come into town hall and vote. We're not sure, I'm not sure about the mechanics of that, but we'll certainly try to get as much information out on those elections and the process for casting your vote as we can. Discovery Woods, the new play space at Acton's Children's Museum, is already open. If you haven't been there, they are having a grand opening, I believe it's next weekend. Is that the 16th and the 17th? Got an email from them today that all children under 12 are going to be able to go to the Discovery Woods for free, whether or not you're actually a member of the Children's Museum. The Acton Community Preservation Committee committed substantial funds to help with that. It's a tree house and an incredible outdoor play space, completely accessible to children of all abilities. So I'm hoping to get there myself and climb into the tree house. Okay. The Concord, the hearing for the special zoning permit involving the Concord water treatment plant over by Quail Ridge was originally continued until July 18th. By agreement with the town of Concord, we have agreed that that will be further continued until September 8th at the Selectmen's meeting on September 8th. So that hearing on July 18th, we will simply open the hearing, continue the hearing until September 8th, and then close the hearing. And I'll turn to the town manager for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are going to have the town clerk and the Board of Registrars come to one of our next couple meetings. It might not be the next meeting to talk about the early voting with the presidential, because we have to, under law now, have early voting 2 weeks prior. And town clerk is working on a plan that may involve using this room and may curtail a couple night meetings, because it has to have some extended hours as part of the early voting. So she'll be presenting a plan, like I said, next meeting or the meeting after. The Acton Leadership Group had their first meeting for the new year on June 30th. Really was more of introduction and going over the ground rules. We do have some new members on the ALG. We have Janet, who's been on the ALG before, but a new rep this time for the Selectmen. Amy Krishnamurthy from the school committee, and Doug Tyndall from the finance committee. The other members have stayed the same. Peter from the Selectmen, Paul Murphy from the School Committee, and Margaret Busey from FinCom, Superintendent Glenn Brand, Maria Altieri from the School Administration, and Finance Director Steve Barrett and myself. So we like I said, we went over the ground rules, and the superintendent and I are going to be putting together a meeting schedule for the balance of the year for ALG to make sure we don't have any conflicts with school committee or other committee meetings on the days that we meet. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and it was really based on the article that was in both the Beacon and the Concord Journal about the Concord Water Project, because the DPW superintendent was apparently my spokesperson in the article, and I just wanted to let everybody know that I did write Rich Rain an email, and I'll just read it. Dear Rich, I'm writing to express my dismay with your statement in both the Concord Journal and the Acton Beacon that, quote, the revised plan has already received a favorable response from several town officials, including Town Manager Stephen Ledoux and Acton's Town Council. While I think it is safe to say that we feel the elimination of the solar field goes a long way to address neighborhood concerns, we have not seen any final plans that would allow us to cast a favorable judgment, which is the main reason the hearing of July 18th is being continued. I would hope in the future that you direct the press to me rather than put words in my mouth. And he did respond and say, hello, Steve, it's unfortunate that the reporter phrased it in that manner. It certainly wasn't my intent to put the cart before the horse. I actually indicated to the reporter when asked that we met with Acton review staff, town manager and council, and reviewed the combined heat and power alternative option, which had the potential to take many of the contentious issues, such as the impact of the archaeological resources tree clearing in Article 97 off the table. And then he said, I'm acutely aware of the sensitivity around this project and the need for a deliberate and open process. Sorry for any difficulty it may have caused you on this end, but I just wanted to say that for the record because I did receive some phone calls about what the hell was I talking about. And as I told Rich privately, I don't need any help getting myself in trouble. I can perfectly do that myself. Well, that's my report.
All right, the next item on the agenda is an alleged underage service for red, white, and brew. This would be a licensing hearing for a violation of their licensing standards. That hearing has been continued to August 8, 2016 at 7:30. The next item on the agenda is a review and public comment on the draft electrical aggregation plan. And I believe we have a presentation for that item.
Peter, we have it scheduled.
Oh, okay. We're going to hold that until the time it's scheduled on the agenda at 7:45, I guess. Well, that'd be the same thing with the 8 o'clock.
Correct.
So we'll do selectmen's business. Selectmen to ratify goals and liaison assignments. Okay, we have in our package, I believe, okay, so the Selectmen's top 5 goals for the short term were to complete the master plan for 348 to 364 Main Street, create a West Acton Development Committee, including sewer, South Acton train station parking and commuter solutions, develop implementation plan for a new storm water permit, and work with Finance Committee and School Committee to enhance communications with the public. So we did a doodle poll. There are 5 goals and 5 selectmen, and we assign a liaison to these goals to ensure that work is going forward to try to get them done in the short term, which would be over the next year. So there was only one select person who picked create a West Acton Development Committee, including sewer, and that was Franny Osmond, who's not here, but obviously would have no objection to being appointed liaison for that goal. And one select person, Janet Adachi, signed up for develop implementation for new storm water permit. So Janet, you can be the liaison for that goal. I would take the South Acton train station parking and commuter solutions goal because I am the liaison to the South Acton train station advisory committee and have been working on a train station for a while, so I will take that goal. Then we had Katie and Chin Sung sign up for both the complete the master plan and work with the finance committee and school committee, enhance communications with the public. Katie is the is chairing the committee to deal with the master plan for Main Street, so it would seem to me to be appropriate for Katie to take that liaison, and you work with the finance committee, Chin Sung, and the school committee to enhance communications. I can work with you on that also. I'm meeting with them on some ideas that we have, so we'll get you included in that. That's okay. All right. So for the long-term goals, develop a comprehensive capital plan, analyze fire and EMS service delivery, build more affordable housing, development of targeted economic development plans for business districts, develop a plan for sewer expansion, and there were no individual selections for liaisons for these. There were at least 2 or 3 who signed up for each one of them, so let me just start with you, Chin Sung. What do you think would be your choice? You picked 2 different ones, so.
I would prefer sorry. I would prefer taking the economic development plan.
Okay. Janet?
Well, I think, oh, I see, yeah, I think I'd prefer the comprehensive capital plan, because I'm going to be representing the board on that anyway.
Okay.
Chances
Certainly makes
are,
sense.
if there's a sewering plan, I'm going to get pulled in anyway, I mean, unofficially, so.
Okay. Katie?
I'll say I think it makes sense probably to assign Franny to the sewer one. A, only her and Janet signed up, and then B, it ties into the other one that she's doing for short term. So I'd say that probably makes the most sense. And then that just leaves you and me with housing and EMS. I think I was assigned to the fire EMS one last year. I don't mind that. I've also been working with the Historical Commission a little bit on sort of related concerns about housing, but I'm happy with either one, so whatever if you have a preference.
Are you the liaison to the ACHC?
No.
Or is that Janet? Is that you?
I think yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's, I mean, neither one ties into
And who's doing the housing authority? Franny now?
Franny.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to take the fire service, and we're working with the union to go to ALS from EMTs, and the North Acton Fire Station needs to be revitalized, so, or wherever. I think we have to look at all the fire stations and decide what the best plan is for distributing them, so I'm happy to take that.
Okay, so I'll do housing.
Okay.
Do you want votes on these, Peter, or you want just consensus?
Do you think we need a vote to ratify that? That's fine.
I don't. Sure, I guess I'll make a motion to ratify the Selectmen's short and long-term goals as outlined in the memo and the liaison assignments as discussed at tonight's meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Liaisons are assigned. All right, we have a discussion of fall town meeting, including closing town warrant. We did reserve a date of October 5th for a possible town meeting. We always have to reserve space at the schools in case we want to have a town meeting well ahead of time, because the schools have get their space all committed early on. In fact, October 5th, if we do have a town meeting, it will be held in the upper gym, I understand, because the auditorium is booked. Steve Ledoux has provided us with a memo about criteria for calling a special town meeting that we should consider. So I'll just read Steve's recommendation. In my mind, there should be three main criteria, setting aside whether we want a fall town meeting for zoning issues. So this is other than zoning issues, criteria for whether we would call it fall town meeting. Issues of timeliness is number one. The town will lose an opportunity if it doesn't act within a certain period of time. Examples of such are litigation, settlements, purchase of land under a right of first refusal, and certain aspects of labor settlements. Number two, requirements of grants if things such as a local match must be appropriated. Number three, acceptances of gifts of land. So we thought we should just have this general discussion, and I believe we're going to close the town meeting warrant tonight, which simply, and help me if I'm wrong here, Steve, means that there are no citizens petitions that could be put on the fall town meeting if we close the warrant.
Right. I would, my recommendation would actually be probably a month from now, like August 15th, because it really has not been well advertised yet that we are having the town meeting. So my suggestion would give folks about a month to get petitions together.
So we would not close the warrant tonight. Okay. And even if,
The
even
15th.
when we close the warrant, the selectmen can always put items ourselves.
It is
on
the selectmen's warrant till we get ready to post the warrant, correct?
Which could be up to a month before the actual town meeting, time to get the
Approximately.
warrant out. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Well, do people have thoughts about the criteria that we...
I mean, if I just might, I suggested the criteria, and these are similar criteria that I've used in other towns. I mean, primarily, and I know the Finance Committee has been kind of critical about how come, we're calling a special town meeting, and, some of them are timeliness, like last year with the purchase of the former Walker property. That was timeliness involved with that. If we hadn't done it, we would have probably been moving on to litigation. So I just think this might better define situations when we call a special town meeting. And I know we talked about having fall town meetings for zoning issues. I'm not sure there's going to be anything this fall, given that all the energy that went into Kelly's Corner. I'm not sure anybody will be ready for any zoning this fall. So we're really just talking about whatever might fall into a criteria. And as I mentioned when we first discussed having a special town meeting, there are at least 2 or 3 issues that we know are out there. We do have a proposed settlement with the fire union. The fire union has not ratified it yet, but there is a timeliness issue embedded in that, because if in fact we're going to move forward with advanced life support, we have to give notice to the Central Middlesex Emergency Response Agency, SMERA, 6 months notice prior to July 1 of 2017. So we need by the end of this year, otherwise we're in it for another year. So in my mind, the union contract does revolve around timeliness. We also have potentially some lease issues with the senior center. The RFPs have gone out, they've been opened. I've had a review committee, there's been 3 sites proposed. Review committee is giving me their evaluation of the 3 sites, and then we'll be bringing that report to the board probably as early as next meeting regarding the senior center. So that, and I know we're still thinking about CPA and increasing the percentage. So those are kind of the 3 issues that potentially are out there.
Yeah,
Janet.
I like the first one I understand, the issue of timeliness, and then also acceptances of gifts of land, which often also, I don't know if that's so much a timeliness thing. I think that there's more timeliness issue with regard to acquisition of land. I think it would be helpful if we're going to include number 2, to kind of expand as to what that means. Requirements of grants of things such as local match must be appropriated, because that starts to sound like there's a timeliness, a deadline by which time the local entity must appropriate a local match. So I don't know if maybe we could move that under the number 1.
That's fine. I would say number 2 doesn't, in my experience, doesn't happen too frequently anyways, so, I mean, it could be moved into number 1. I don't have a big issue with that.
I mean, it's a good illustration of the kinds of things that might come, even if we've never encountered it in our town, or you haven't encountered it very much in the towns where you've been town manager. Well, just interesting, I'm looking at this with respect to the things that we've talked about as possibly on special town meeting for the fall. And I think that the one thing that sort of jumps out for me anyways, the ALS process. I mean, I think that there's a lot that needs to happen in by a certain time if that's supposed to move forward. I'm not so sure about the senior center lease agreement, although I know there are a lot of people who are very anxious about that. And of course, given what's happened lately, I'm really kind of leery about the CPA surcharge issue, only because, well, for a lot of reasons, I do happen to agree with suggestions of other people that it's a money issue, and it probably ought to be in the context of other kind of big money issues on the spring town meeting warrant, but I may be outnumbered on this board, but those are just my thoughts about, I think it's a good idea to have guidelines, because yes, my liaison committee, the FinCom, has been raising the issue a fair amount, and I think that there is some good reason for it, but thank you for at least putting together something for us to discuss.
Katie?
Sure, I mean, if we're just talking about this tonight, I think the memo and sort of the criteria is helpful. I agree with Janet, you can put 2 under number 1. I think last year was frustrating. We had a number of special town meetings, but it was just one of those years that we had a number of really timely issues that had to be dealt with, and fell under this number 1 issues of timeliness. And so anyways, I think it's helpful. Then we have a sort of document we can point to explain why we're calling a special town meeting. Sounds like we're not talking about this fall town meeting tonight, so I'll reserve any comments on that.
I would agree with what's been said. I think guidelines are good, and Janet made the comment I was going to, which is number 2 seems like a subsection of number 1, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly good to have guidelines. I think we did have some issues last year with several town meetings. I would note under these guidelines, we would not call a town meeting just for something like the CPC surcharge. Then it becomes a question of, if you have a town meeting for something that falls within these guidelines, do you add something else that could wait till the spring, but for certain reasons you might want to put on the agenda? I suppose that's a separate question, but do we want to vote tonight to accept these guidelines, or wait till the next meeting and see if Franny wants to weigh in and maybe think about them more and mark them up, or what's your pleasure?
Is there any urgency? I mean, if there's no urgency to it, waiting for Franny to have a chance to say what she wants to say seems to me like a good idea.
No, yeah, there is no urgency. Even if we have a fall town meeting, we wouldn't call it until August sometime, so, or
Clear,
later.
Peter, we have called a town meeting, but we wouldn't, we called it at the meeting you weren't here, just so you're clear on that.
On October 5th.
Right, we've
But
called
we might
a town
decide
meeting.
not to,
Right,
not
but
to hold it, okay.
just to
Right.
not,
Okay,
we have called a town meeting, if we go forward with it or not, but
right, okay. All right, so we'll put that on the next meeting's agenda. Okay, we still got time to move on. Discussion of a designation of implementing authority pursuant to Section 5.1 of bylaw Roman numeral 10, Acton Special Town Meeting approval November 10th, 2015, Mass Attorney General approval February 2nd, 2016, and the bylaw became effective on May 10th, 2016. And Janet, I believe this is in your jurisdiction, so I ask you to address this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had sent an email for the packet. I don't know if it ended up, if people saw it in extra information, and I was sort of hoping that there would be a copy. What you have here is just a copy of Chapter Bylaw X, and basically this is riffing off of the language in Bylaw X, which requires that we designate somebody as the implementing authority, because as things stand now under Bylaw X, which addresses stormwater management, the Board of Selectmen is the implementing authority, and I don't think that it was ever contemplated that we would actually be responsible for dealing with stormwater issues in a very daily, detailed, technical way. So what I did, and I wish I had the language, copies of the language for you, but because I'm not finding it, but here is what
It's highlighted in the thing.
Excuse me?
It's highlighted in the little thingy, section 8.1.
No, that's the language of Bylaw X. What I drafted
Okay.
is a motion, so
Oh,
I'll
I
read it
see.
to you.
Okay.
I did run this by the town manager. He said that we, which I assume is you and maybe Selby, who's the land use director, and also the engineering director, are fine with the language, because they're the ones who are, basically, this is dumping on the town departments and the town staff the responsibility for actually dealing with this issue. They are much better equipped and, to do that than we are. But here's what I've written. Move pursuant to Section 8.1 of Town of Acton Bylaw X pertaining to stormwater management and erosion and sediment control law, also hereafter known as Bylaw X, that 1, the Acton Board of Selectmen designate collectively the Land Use and Economic Development Director, the Town Engineer/Public Works Director, and the Town of Acton departments under their administrative authority as the implementing authority. That is a defined term in the Bylaw X, so it's capitalized. Under Bylaw X, responsible for carrying out the provisions of Bylaw X as well as any related regulations, that's capital R, that the Board of Selectmen may adopt. And number 2, the designating implementing authority report at least annually to the Board of Selectmen on the status of implementation efforts under Bylaw X. So it would be easier for you to respond if you had this in front of you, but if you have any comments, concerns, let me know. This is a sort of a technical thing that we have to do in order to allow the departments to actually start doing what they have to do to make the town comply with Bylaw X, which in turn will allow us to comply with the EPA permit, which has now been supplanted by a permit that will go into effect next year, which they're also working on complying with. So I'd welcome any comments. Otherwise, welcome a motion to just approve that designation. Or I've already moved, but, does somebody want to second it?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
All right, next item on the agenda is the Selectmen to...
Peter, can we hold on that one until, because Charlie sent us an email, and I think there is an issue, and
Right.
I think we should wait until he's possibly able to come.
Yeah,
from his
I'm not
meeting.
sure that's necessary. I made a mistake in my communication to Lisa about the numbers.
Okay.
And if you look at the backup to that, I don't know if we have it here, but it is online as part of it. It should read, change the membership from 7 full members to 5 full members, with continuing with 2 associates. So if we can make that amendment, I think that addresses Charlie's issue.
Okay.
And that's what Andy Brockway, who's the chair of the committee, was asking for. I
For
just made a
7 to 5.
mistake, but
Okay.
So with that change, can I have a motion to change the membership of Acton 2020 from 7 to 5 full members?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We can have a quick discussion, I believe, of the three-board meeting of the Acton Boxborough Regional School Committee. This came out of discussions between at the ALG meeting. This is a three-board meeting between the Regional Schools, Finance Committee, and the Board of Selectmen. After the ALG meeting, Margaret Busey and Amy Krishnamurthy and I spoke about having a three-board meeting. In the past few years, we have had kind of business meetings with the three boards, although there's certainly been some social aspects to it. We went over budgets and FinCom's point of view and whatnot. Amy had offered her house for holding a three-board meeting. We talked more about a social type of meeting where people could get to know each other better. I'm not even familiar with some of the members of the school committee. Then Steve Ledoux suggested that we needed some team building exercises would be helpful to help with communication and between the three boards and relations between the three boards. So I have a meeting on July 20th with Amy and Margaret to discuss the issues, and I floated that idea by both of them. I think they are amenable to that. The concept would be we would still meet at Amy's and have a retreat. It would be a posted meeting for all three boards, obviously. Members of the public could attend if they wished. She lives in town, obviously, so it's allowed under the open meeting law, but we would get Bart to come and moderate exercises for team building for the first hour or hour and a half or whatever, and then adjourn to a more social type of situation. So that's the concept. I just wanted to bring it to the board and talk about it and see if people had suggestions or what they felt about it, and still have another meeting. That'd be in September, hopefully, and still have another three-board meeting, maybe in October, that would deal more with the business aspects of each board. So that's what we've been talking about. So
If Amy is willing to host the three boards at her house, I assume that once we adjourn, then we can kick out anybody who showed up just for the business part. But, no, I mean, I happen to, yeah, the three-board meetings vary in quality depending on who organizes them, but I find that the better ones have actually been I think, been interesting, and they do certainly get you to know other people. Yeah, there are people on the school committee who I still don't, I just recognize them, but I don't know who they are and don't know anything about them. And I'm sure that there are people who feel that way about the finance committee, which has a number of new members, and they probably feel that they don't know who all the rest of us are. So, ambitious if you're aiming to have another three-board meeting in the fall. That's all I could say, but I'd be glad to help. I might dread offering, but I have jury duty next month. I just wanted to warn you. So.
I think it's a good idea. I like the idea. I think if there's any concerns about the time and trying to have both of them, I would put the emphasis more on the social and team building one, because I think that would be more useful. And I appreciate Amy being willing to host it. If we do post it as public meetings, I think we just want to make sure that it's okay to have it at her house, because I know there's sometimes, I don't know if there's issues with making sure it's accessible. Like handicap accessible. So I would just triple check that. But otherwise, I think it's great. I think it's wonderful that she's willing to host it, and hopefully we can do it in some way that the whole burden isn't on her. I'm, happy to do potluck or whatever. And I appreciate Bart being willing to come and do the team building exercises as well. There's been a lot of new members on the boards lately, so I think it's a good idea just to meet in that informal aspect. And then if we feel that there's a need to do the kind of follow-up business meeting in October, we can, but I prefer this way.
Chin-Sung.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Katie just said, and what Janet said before. I think it's good to have this meeting. I do think it's a little bit ambitious to do it twice in the span of maybe a month and a half. But we can always decide whether or not the second meeting is necessary based on what happens in the first meeting. So I don't foresee any problems with going ahead with it.
Okay, and Steve, you have experience with meetings that aren't in public buildings in town, or?
Generally not, no.
Well, about
look
the
into
open
it.
meeting law issue that Katie asked about, or?
Well, it's not, it's more the accessibility issue. I mean, we can post it as an open meeting and anybody can attend. It's more accessible. I don't know anything about Amy's house or anything like that. So.
Oh, accessibility for
Right.
people with.
Because where
Yeah.
public meetings are supposed to be accessible. So
Okay.
I think you just want to make sure that
All right,
that,
I'll
so presumably it would be in our backyard or on the first floor or something, but just
Okay.
making sure
Yep.
I don't want to get dinged for that later.
All right, well,
But it's a
certainly-
very nice offer for her
Yeah,
to do
no,
it.
certainly.
My place isn't big enough for everybody, so I'm not offering.
Okay, it being 7:45, we're moving on to the Selectmen to review and hold public comment on the draft aggregation plan.
Mr. Chair, if I might introduce our folks. As the board knows, back at annual town meeting, we accepted a statute that allowed us to do electric aggregation for our residents. In May, I put together a committee that included Mary Smith from the Green Advisory Board, Steve Long from Green Acton, Land Use Director Selby, Andrea Ristine, the Municipal Properties Director, and myself. And we interviewed, there's 3 firms that basically serve as consultants in Massachusetts for electric aggregation. We interviewed the 3 firms. All 5 of us unanimously recommended Peregrine Energy. So tonight we have Peregrine Energy to walk through the aggregation plan that is required that we have to file with both Department of Public Utilities and Department of Energy Resources. We have here tonight Paul Gromer and Marlena Patton from Peregrine. So maybe if you guys want to come up here, that would be good. I think you can point anywhere, but no, you just got to point towards the screen. Don't listen to me. Oh, there we go. No, okay. Okay, all right.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the purpose of this agenda item, as Steve described, is to have a brief discussion and then a public hearing about the town's proposed municipal aggregation plan as required by the state municipal aggregation statute. The way we'll proceed, if it makes sense to you, is that my colleague Marlena Patton and I will give a brief presentation describing the plan. Then we'll answer any questions that you and the members of the board might have, and then if it made sense to you, if you could open it to public comment on the plan and invite folks in the audience to offer comments. And then there's also an opportunity for written comment after, which I'll discuss as part of the presentation. So if that makes sense for you, we'll charge ahead.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So briefly, what municipal aggregation is, just by way of background, is it's a form of group purchasing in which a city or town arranges an electricity supply on behalf of its residents and businesses. It's a little bit like Costco for electricity. It's increasingly popular in Massachusetts. There are about 75 communities with active aggregation plans now, another 25 at least that are in the planning stages, the way Acton is. So sometime after the first of the year, I'm sure there will be over 100 communities in Massachusetts with active aggregations. One important thing to know as a way of background is that aggregation applies only to the electricity supply. As you likely know, electricity service has 2 components. There's the electricity itself, which is called supply, and then there's the delivery of that electricity over the wires, which is creatively called delivery. When it comes to delivery, there's no choice. The local utility, in Acton's case Eversource, provides the delivery service no matter what. But when it comes to supply, there is a choice. Individual residents can choose a supplier on their own. A lot of businesses do that, a small number of residents. You can let the utility choose a supplier for you, and that's called basic service, or the town can choose the supplier, and that's called aggregation, which is what we're talking about tonight. Another very important thing to know about aggregation is that under state law, it's an opt-out program, which means that when the program launches, all eligible customers become part of the program unless they opt out of the program. Because of that, there are many ways that customers can opt out. They can opt out before the program begins. They can opt out anytime after. There's never any fee or penalty for opting out, and there are lots of vehicles by which they can opt out, and we'll talk about those more as we go along. To briefly hit the benefits of the program, most towns think of 4 benefits. The first is a way of getting a greener electricity supply for the town to help the town advance its climate goals and to do that in a cost-effective way. The next, and we'll talk more about the environmental strategies in a second. The next benefit is to create a choice for residents so that they can have choices about what they pay for electricity and the environmental content of that electricity. The third benefit is price stability. The utility basic service prices have become very volatile, much higher in the winter and lower in the summer. The aggregation will look to have a year-round price that's stable throughout the year and protect customers from those price swings. And then the final benefit is transparency. This will be a very consumer-friendly offering. There are other competitive supply offerings available in the market. Some of them are good, some of them are a little bit too good to be true, with teaser rates or hidden fees, fixed-term contracts. The town's program will be designed with the residents of Acton in mind. It will be very consumer-friendly with transparent pricing, no hidden fees, so it will be a good option for folks in the marketplace. And then, I'm sure I'm behind on the slides, I apologize. And then finally, to talk for 1 minute about the environmental strategies. There are really 3 components to that. The first is to include more renewable electricity in the supply that all customers get unless they choose something else. In an aggregation, the vast majority of customers end up on this standard offering, and by making that include more renewable energy is the most effective way the town has through aggregation to reduce its greenhouse gas footprint. The next benefit is to create optional products, offer optional products that have an even higher renewable energy content for customers who might want those. And then the final option would be to include local renewable energy within the program. So it's in a way to make a stronger connection between the town and its electricity supply, a little bit like local agriculture, where you might buy produce from here in Acton. We would be looking to include electricity, solar electricity, primarily generated in Acton or in the surrounding towns. So that's a brief overview of how aggregation works and the benefits. Marlene will talk now about the participant experience and the customer education component.
Sure. So, is that close enough? No. Is that good? All right. So, the experience from the participant's point of view is pretty straightforward. It's a pretty seamless enrollment process. Participants really see only 2 changes on their bill. One is they see the change in the rate for their electricity supply, and then the other is they see a change under supplier services from Eversource Basic Service to the name of the supplier that the town contracts with. Otherwise, there's no change. There's no interruption in service, and there's no change in how electricity issues are addressed. So, for example, everybody still continues to get one bill from Eversource, just like before, if they don't already have an electricity supply agreement with someone else. Eversource continues to deliver the electricity. Everybody remains an Eversource customer. Eversource continues to restore outages, power after outages, and they maintain the poles and the wires. If you have solar panels on your roof, net metering continues to work the same way. It's calculated the same way, credits work the same way. And anyone who is eligible for any discounts, anything like that, it still works the same way with the program. So it's very seamless from an end user perspective. Oh, I didn't realize I had sorry, I didn't know I had the remote. All right. Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. So about a month before the program launches, actually take that back, about 6 weeks or so before the program launches, maybe a little more, the town will sign an agreement with the electricity supplier. And at that point, the town will have all the details about the program, like the price, specifically how much and what kind of renewable energy will be in there, what kind of options the program can offer, the duration of the electricity supply contract. None of those details are settled until that electricity supply contract is signed. Once that's signed, we then kick off a public education campaign. And that campaign really happens for the 30 days before the program launches. The campaign will begin with the mailing of what's called the opt-out letter, which is a letter that will go out to all eligible program participants. And the purpose of the letter is to introduce the program, explain the pricing options, explain the pricing, explain any options, and explain the right to opt out and how to do that, how to not participate if you don't want to. So that letter will go out to everyone, and then the letter will be followed by a series of public events, public information sessions that will be open to the entire community. We'll try and also do one targeted for seniors, and if there are any other groups that we need to do special information sessions for, we will. We'll do an interview on cable access. We'll have web content. There's already web content available about this. It just kind of explains what aggregation is, but we'll have all these details up at that time too. And then we also will be providing customer support by phone and email. When this letter goes out, once people start to learn about the program, if they decide they don't want to participate, they can opt out before it even begins during this 30-day period. And they'll be able to do that either through the return of a postcard that they get with the letter, or they'll be able to do it over the phone, or they'll be able to do it online. After the program begins, if someone decides that they want to participate in the program for a little while and then opt out later, they're welcome to do that, and they will continue to have the phone and web-based options for opting out. There's no minimum participation requirement, and there is no fee or penalty associated with opting out of the program.
Thank you. I'm not too good with the technology here. We'll see if I can fall off my chair next to hit the trifecta for the evening. So just to quickly go over the schedule, right now we're in the public comment period on the plan. We'll have public comment tonight if there is any, and then there's also an opportunity to submit comments in writing until July 28th. After that, or even we've already begun, there's a regulatory review process, as Steve explained, by two state agencies, the Department of Energy Resources and the Department of Public Utilities. It's not an arduous process, but it is time-consuming, so it will take us several months at least to get through that process. After that, as soon as that regulatory process is done, we'll conduct a competitive procurement for an electricity supplier. If the town receives bids for supply that are satisfactory to the town, you'll enter into a contract with a supplier, and then we'll move into the public education campaign that Marlena described and launch the program. Our best guess now is, our target now is to try to launch the program in March, but that will depend primarily on the length of the regulatory review process, which we can estimate, but we can't control. So that might take less time, it might take more time. And so that's our overview. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Janet?
Yeah, I had a question first about opting out. I know that initially, it sounds as if from the slides, when you opt out, it sounds as if after the month is over, then you proceed, move forward with the program based on the people who are staying in, haven't opted out. One I have a question about is the lag time if people decide to opt out once the program is underway. And the other question I have is about opting in. Suppose somebody opts out and then sees that his neighbors are getting really good deals and wants in. Anyhow, how does that process work?
Sorry, back with the technology. So to answer the second part first, the program will be designed so that people are able to opt back in if they opt out. That's not a problem, but they will not be guaranteed the program rate if they opt out and then opt back in. They would be given a market rate for the duration of that electricity supply contract. And that's so that the electricity supplier doesn't have to bear the risk of people trying to game the system. And when they don't have to bear that risk, they can offer a lower price for the community. With regard to the timing of how long it takes between when you make the request to opt out and you are opted out, usually everything happens on your meter read date. So if you opt out in between, it should show up on your next meter read. But that's how you would know, is that you would see the change on your next bill. that you had been switched back to basic service.
And then the only other question I had is, what is an eligible participant? Is that the residents in the town? Is it people who are using Eversource? How do you come up with that list? Just
Is
curious.
Eversource basic service participants? So this includes residents and businesses within the geographic boundaries of Acton.
Thank you.
Oh, and just to clarify, some people will also be curious what happens if you already have an agreement with an electricity supplier that you've made yourself. So those people will not be automatically enrolled in the program. We wouldn't want to proactively terminate anyone's agreement that they've already made. But if they want to participate in the program, they can do that. They would just need to affirmatively opt into the program.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Katie?
I just want to say thank you for the work that you've done and the presentation tonight. And I appreciate all the different ways you're planning to do the public outreach. And I would just, it sounded like you said you would do special sort of targeted public meetings. And so I'd encourage you to work with, the town manager and the board on who to do that with. Because I think you mentioned seniors doing one at the senior center, maybe doing one at our Chinese language school. And I believe there was mention in the materials you sent us about, translating the information as well. So I appreciate that. I did have a question, but I'm not remembering it right now. Oh, my one question is there any concern about the timeline about going out to bid in the winter? And does that affect the potential prices that we might get?
Sure, that's a great question. So generally speaking, the fall is the best time of year to procure electricity. Most years, prices are lowest then. So we'll try to do the procurement as soon as we can, but we'll do it as soon as we're authorized to do it, and we'll see what prices we get at that time. And we'll make the comparison to basic service, the utility price, and see if it looks favorable for the town. And it's always the town's decision whether to go forward. And if the prices are not attractive when they come back, we'll postpone and try again later and try to get a more favorable price later on.
Okay.
But it is in our interest, as you pointed out, to move as quickly as we can and have the option to start that procurement as soon as possible.
Right. Okay. And so then you come back to us and that's when we would discuss what those sort of options are about the mix of renewables. Okay. Because I think that's definitely something to, we'd have to kind of see the numbers on to better understand, but I'm excited about that opportunity. And as Green Acton noted in a email they sent to us, it really is, a great and probably one of the best opportunities we have to lower our town's carbon footprint. So I think it's a great program. I know towns that have successfully done this. I worked for when Lunenburg was one of the first towns to do it, mostly because they hate Unitil, but it's worked out really well for them. So I'm excited that we're taking advantage of this.
I was just curious, because I know I saw some numbers, and then obviously the numbers and the specific details will be important, but I was just curious, do we have numbers as far as what the average Acton resident is paying as an electricity rate right now?
Yes, the average resident in Acton pays on the order of about $120 a month for electricity. It varies, of course, by how much.
I mean rate as far as per kilowatt hour.
Oh, so the utility basic service rate in Acton is, hold on, I did.
I don't have that at the...
The Eversource basic service rate starting in July is 8.2 cents a kilowatt hour. That's the generation part of the bill, which I mentioned earlier, and that's what the aggregation will be compared against. There are also delivery charges, which are another 10 cents or so on top of that.
No, I am aware of that. I was just curious because in some of the supplementary material, I saw some numbers quoted, and so I was curious as far as, where we are relative to those numbers. Thank you.
I'm interested in the comment period. Is it a 30-day period, or who determines how long it runs, or?
You do. So there isn't
Okay.
the state requirement is just that there be a comment period, but the state doesn't specify how long that needs to be. Most towns follow a procedure very much like Acton is, where you discuss it at a Board of Selectmen meeting and have some period for comment after. We've noticed it on the website through July 28th, which is on the generous side compared to other towns. And there is, once we're at the Department of Public Utilities, they will also have a public hearing on their own, so there is another public hearing opportunity.
Okay. We've already started getting a number of comments, which you've seen. people are going to be very surprised that they are signed up automatically with some company they didn't know about. Although, when we did it, we put it in the warrant, when we adopted it at town meeting, we made clear that that's what the statute requires to ensure that you would get bids that, people could, the companies that bid on this would be relatively confident of a certain minimum number of people so that they could come up with prices. Anybody can opt out at any time, and I'm sure they have algorithms that figure out what the standard percentage is. But it looks like you're going to be submitting this preliminary plan during the review period. So suppose comments come in that make you change the preliminary plan. Can you amend it when you at DOER?
Yes, we can, and in fact, the DOER review process contemplates that. It's what they call a consultative process, so they very much want a draft version of the plan. After they've reviewed it, they'll have a meeting with the town, they'll have comments potentially, there'll be an opportunity at that time to incorporate any citizen comments, and then after that, we'll finalize it before we file it with the Department of Public Utilities, which is the next step.
Do they see all the citizens' comments also, DOER?
They typically don't ask. There'd be no reason not to share them, but typically they don't ask for them, though.
So it's up to us and you as the consultants to decide whether we agree with some comment somebody might make and then go to the DOER and say, well, we want to amend our draft plan.
That's exactly right. There's the way the state review process works is there are certain requirements of state law, and the state agencies will make sure that the town has met all those requirements. But within those boundaries, they're very deferential to the town about making the decisions about what are your priorities for the program and having your own process for incorporating citizen comment.
Okay, unless there's any follow-up by board members, I'll listen to members of the public who might have comments about this.
Hi, Dave Pluff, Evergreen Road. You mentioned people who might currently be under an aggregator and how to get in. I know there's a lot of institutions and companies that probably already have that. You did say that they could get into it. You didn't say whether they needed to opt in before the program launched to get the program rate, or can they only get in after the program launches?
That's a great question. So you're welcome, if you're one of those folks, or anyone who is one of those folks is welcome to join the program. Once we start the public education campaign, you can affirmatively opt in then, and you can also opt in after the program begins. And in all cases, you would receive the program rate. The only time somebody would not be eligible for the program rate is if they affirmatively opt out and then choose to come back in. But somebody who already has an existing supply agreement was not eligible to become part of the program when it launched, and so you're not viewed as someone who opted out and then tried to come back.
Thank you. Sure. By the way, I think it's a great plan.
Great.
Shuyu Lee, 99 Skyline Drive, and think I'm the liaison to the Board of Selectmen. I have two questions. One is more general, and the other one is more technical. For the general question is, does this plan has any impact to the town's finance? Positive or negatively?
I'm sorry, I just missed the last part of the question.
So if the town decided to adapt to this plan, would there any financial impact to the town, whether positive or negative?
That's a good question. So there's no financial impact to the town itself. No financial commitment for the town to pay either us or the competitive supplier. If you go forward, those costs are all covered through the electricity rates.
Okay, and then the second one is a technical question. Let's say that I'm a business. I'm running an IT business and require very reliable voltage. And then there are two suppliers. One is Eversource, one is National Grid. So let's, for the sake of argument, one of them provide a better stable voltage. And I like to choose that provider. And then because all the lines, transmission lines are combined, how do I know I can get a better electric supply with a better, more stable voltage?
So that's something that this program would not affect one way or the other. So This program affects how electricity is procured at the wholesale level, and it affects the price that you pay for it. But in terms of what's delivered to your business and the reliability of the supply and the voltage level, that's all handled by the distribution company, Eversource, or if you're on a border community, you could choose National Grid, and that's not affected by this one way or the other.
So the other way to say this is like everybody here, we decided to go with a Coke, and somebody decided to go with Pepsi. We have this big bucket, you just dump one Pepsi in there, and everybody drink the same thing, right? Okay, all right. Thank
Exactly
you.
right.
Yes, sir.
I thought you guys did that. Steve Long from Green Acton. I just wanted to express appreciation for the process that the town manager ran in selecting vendors. We had a panel of 5. We had a set of what I thought were very fair questions. We had the vendors in and were able to ask questions and get some good clarification from all 3. And I definitely, there was a unanimous choice of Peregrine. I think it's a good match for Acton. They really seem to have a good approach to community relations, and I think they'll help us to get a better deal. In terms of Green Acton, we're very pleased that the town will be able to reduce its greenhouse gas footprint, knowing that climate change is one of the biggest challenges we face as a society. And one of the things I'm particularly excited about is exploring more environmentally preferable forms of energy, because not all renewables are created equal, and some have impacts on land and water resources, and we can help adjust the program to address that issue. And finally, there are some exciting incentive programs that utilities offer that once the program rolls out, I'd like to work with Peregrine and the town to explore. If we can help consumers in Acton use energy during times when there's less consumption going on, then we might be able to get better rates and a better deal for the town with incentives from the utilities. So thank you for the work on behalf of the town, and thank you, Peregrine.
Any other comments?
Sorry, I have one more question, actually. If you're on oil and you want to be in the Mass Save program, you need to get electricity from Eversource, I think. Does this affect that for anybody?
No, this literally only affects the supply portion of your electricity bill. That's it.
So because it's still a delivery, you're still an Eversource client?
You're still an
It doesn't
Eversource
matter.
customer,
Thank you.
yep.
Okay, we generated already several comments today, and it's just people reading the agenda and maybe going to the website, but it might be a good idea to go to ActonTV and they have like scrolls, or, they put messages up.
Well, Marlena and I Thursday, I'm going to make Marlena a star of local TV on Thursday. So that's our first step, is we're going to be kind of doing the overview of aggregation on Thursday, and we can talk to Mark when we're there about
Okay.
kind of scrolling. But.
Great.
Thank you. And just as we depart, I'll offer one comment, which is that we've done these programs now in quite a few communities, including some much larger than Acton, and Acton has by far set the record for the number of public comments. It's not even close. Already, on day 1, you're already at the head of the pack. Very engaged citizenry here.
I'm sure you will get one brilliant comment that will make you change your draft plan and include an idea that you hadn't thought about before,
So do you need anything from us in terms of the length of the public comment period or anything like that, or it was just more informative tonight? and holding
Just
a
more
public hearing?
informative. We're good to go as far as we're concerned, and we've been working closely with Steve, and everything's running very smoothly from our perspective.
Yeah, it's been good. I don't think anybody can complain about process, so that's always good.
All right, it being past 8 o'clock, we're going to open the hearing. Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on July 11, 2016, at 8 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, on the application of Filho's Great Road, 59 Great Road, Acton, under Section 140 of the Massachusetts General Laws for a common victualler license. The application can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. And this is an application by, are you Mr. Filho?
I am, Filho.
Okay,
How are you?
fine, thanks. We have all your documentation here. This is simply a change in the business. Is this the business from Bella Familia Restaurant to your restaurant, going to be called?
Filho's Great Road.
Filho's?
Yes.
Great Road, okay. Any questions from board members?
The only thing I recall from reading this is that you're going to be dealing with is this the one where you're dealing with the liquor licensing right now? You're later, right? There's some
Yes,
liquor.
my attorney just filed for it a little bit later, so
Yeah.
I guess we'll be back here in a few weeks.
And you're dealing with the planning department about the sign
Yep, that's
issue.
yeah.
And then I think the health department, you must be dealing with them
Yeah.
on the licensing for
Yes.
that. So, well, I think it's nice to have an Italian restaurant continue at that location.
Thank you.
And I was sort of surprised to realize that La Familia is moving on, but you know, as long as we have another restaurant to take its place, that's...
I've known Joan Mazzi for a long time, and we go back over 30 years. And I've been in business in Groton now for the last 14 years. So we're looking to come to Acton and continue the success.
So I noticed in the application that you just got a victualler's license in Groton as well? Is that?
I have one there, yes.
Okay. Is it also for a Filho's restaurant?
Yeah, it's Filho's Cucina down there. It's a different concept. I don't have full liquor. I have a BYOB license, and it's more geared towards takeout as opposed to Filho's Great Road, which will be a full-service restaurant.
Okay. Great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, any other questions? Let me just, you're going to operate without selling liquor for a couple of weeks, is that what you're saying?
If need be, in the opening process, we might do it without the liquor license, just to get the people acclimated to the food and stuff.
Okay,
All right?
yep. And you know you need I'm sure you're aware you need a food service license from
I
the
have
Board of
it.
Health, so.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Somebody want to make a motion?
Move to approve the common victualler's license for Filho's Cucina, 59 Great Road.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We are on to the consent agenda. First item on the consent agenda is the meeting minutes of June 15, 2016.
Hold.
Okay. Second item on the consent agenda is a one-day alcoholic beverage license for Ron Lipinski at Nara Park on July 23, 2016. Number 11, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Optometrics Corporation at Nara Park, July 28, 2016. Number 12 is a committee reappointments for the Acton Nursing Services Task Force. Number 13, committee appointments, Bill Mullen, Ann Chang, and David Brown, at-large members for the 348 to 364 Main Street Master Plan Special Committee. Number 14, one-day alcoholic beverage license, John Harrington, Narrow Park, August 6th, 2016. Number 15, accept a fee, Planning Department, Selectmen to approve a fee deposit totaling $5,000 from Keenan & Son LLP to provide funding for town council review services associated with the definitive subdivision residential compound for Jamie's Way and Thomas Drive, as stated in the Planning Board decision number 15-07. Number 16, a change in doing business as Poe's Barbecue and Ribs to Ginger Court, AB Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission acknowledgement. Number 17, executive session minutes for June 20th, 2016. Number 18, accept a gift, Natural Resources, Selectmen to accept a gift valued at $220 for a pair of binoculars donated by the Hearts Corporation to Natural Resources. Number 19, accept a gift, Planning Department, Selectmen to accept a gift totaling $500 from Nagog Homes LLC in lieu of the Sidewalk Fund. Number 20, accept gift, Recreation Department, Selectmen to accept a gift totaling $500 from the Steinberg Lally Charitable Foundation for payment of services for a classical concert held on June 30th, 2016. Number 21, accept a gift, Recreation Department, Selectmen to accept a gift totaling $500 from an anonymous citizen for payment of services for a classical concert held on June 30, 2016. Number 22, request to dispose of obsolete material from the Acton Memorial Library. Number 23, accept a gift, Planning Department, Selectmen to accept a gift totaling $6,000 from Keenan & Son in lieu of the Sidewalk Fund. And number 24, a conflict of interest disclosure from Jeff Clymer at the Planning Department. Did we get that form? I got an email from Lisa that said it did come in. Do you have it? Okay. So we'll pull that and put it on for next Monday. Yeah, okay. Katie, you want to address the item you pulled?
Yeah, number 9, this was the meeting minutes for the joint meeting we held about the library trustees. I think there is a mistake in the vote, and I'm pretty sure that Sampada voted for Tom, and it's not listed that way. I don't have it in my notes, so I just want to triple check with them before we approve these minutes. So unless somebody else has it written in their notes and they have them here, then if we could just hold it to our next meeting.
Yeah, the next agenda.
And I'll check with them. But otherwise, I will make a motion to approve consent agenda items 10 through 23.
Anyone want a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And that completes our agenda for this evening, I believe.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. We took care of your problem, Charlie. We went to 5.